think that's a good start. Okie dokie. So we have a start tonight. I've got a little bit of stuff I need to do tonight before I need to go to, because I have to be up early in order to get ready to drive an hour to be at my friend's wedding. But it is my friend's wedding, so that takes priority here. So starting off tonight, I do have some protein chips, which, I mean, this is not the high protein diet that we're doing right now, but it is low carb. And if you're getting your fats from other sources, the protein content, 18 grams on this, is within the limit of what I'm supposed to get for protein for my percentage of protein. Let's see, I should try to look at that, because that's one of the other things. It's like people get hung up on the idea of keto is high fat, so why would you eat something high in protein? Well, because I technically get 128.2 grams of protein in my diet today, and if I'm doing it right, I should be able to squeeze in. One bag of these has 18 grams of protein, so I think it's got enough of the distance. Now, it only has 6 grams of fat on it, so that's not a lot of fat, but as a chip that you can then put other things on, like a dip made with sour cream or cream cheese or something else like that, that's probably not a bad way to go. I do also have some homemade stuff here too, but we'll try these first and see what we think of those. And then I'll introduce you to the rest of the food that I'm playing around with. So these are supposed to be like a Dorito. Now the thing I am, it smells a little off for a Dorito, but the thing I'm a little less impressed with is this bag here. The price of this bag, I think, was $2, $2.50, something like that. And for the same price, I can get a family-sized bag of pork rinds. I think the only distinction between the two that's really important is if you really want something that tastes different than a pork rind, which I sometimes really do, this might be better. So it's very pale and very uniform. It's not as hearty a crunch as a Dorito, but honestly, I'm not mad at it. It's almost a little bit more like a rice Dorito. It's kind of like a rice cracker. It's pretty good though. So we've got about 5 grams of carb. So that works. Save a little bit here so I can introduce it to the rest of the food. But, okay, so one of the things I did do, an easy one to talk about here, is made some tuna salad, homemade tuna salad. Tuna from a can in vegetable oil. Drain it, mix it with some homemade mayonnaise. I put in a little bit of onion powder, a touch of a little bit of garlic powder, but a touch more onion powder than garlic, and little splits of homemade mustard. And I don't usually do celery, so I diced up some pepper, green pepper, like a bell pepper, and mix that in there. You can eat that with a fork. I have done that when I've been lazy. But the other thing I want to do is, these are sort of like they're a little bit like a wrap if they're softer. I have some here that are actually crunchier, I think. It really depends on how long you have them in, but they can kind of snap in the middle too. But they are pretty fatty, so they're fat and protein, so they're not likely to crack and snap unless you really, really bake them long. These are aged shredded cheddar cheese. Put in a frying pan. Let melt, and then let go past melt, but not enough to burn them, but enough for them to set up. Pull them off, let them cool, flip them, put them back on, sear the other side so you can get that nice dark color. And it's sort of like a tortilla or a wrap. So this makes it sort of like a little mini tuna melt with melted cheese used as a little tuna taco. Now you can actually take the mock Doritos and crush them up and put them on top. Get a little of that crunch in there if you want it. But actually this works pretty nicely for me. Now, I won't make these often, because quite frankly, I don't really want to spend the 20 minutes to make 8. And you can make them smaller. You can cook them till they're much more brittle. I mean, you're essentially burning them at that point until they're crunchy. I think some of the edges are a little crisp. But, yeah, I mean, cheese and egg are going to be staples if you're going to try to do something keto. It is tasty, though. And if you're not worried about your carb intake, or you feel like you could get away with a little bit of it, in the past, I've made the homemade mayonnaise and then added like a teaspoon, sometimes a little bit more, of homemade honey mustard, and it makes that mayonnaise absolutely gourmet. I'm not a heavy mayonnaise lover, and I will say, homemade mayonnaise can be very, very heavy. I've found that if you're going with just the egg yolk and the oil, it has a very heavy, heavy flavor. But if you do the egg whites as well, it makes it lighter. It's a little bit easier to tolerate. You do a little pinch of mustard powder in there. It gives the mayonnaise a little flavor besides the heavy oil nature of it. But yeah, it's something I'll probably be doing this a lot more during the subsequent weeks of keto. Now that I'm pretty much done with the bars. But the real taste test for today is the Quest chips. And honestly, they do not taste like a Dorito. I think the best description I can give those is sort of like a rice cracker with nacho seasoning. And you can sort of see how delicate the texture is for it. mean, it's actually, that's something I should probably do. See if I can get close to the mic and see if it'll pick it up. So there's a lighter, crisp crunch to it rather than the hearty of a ground corn. Does have enough of that little nacho seasoning zing to it, and it has a fair amount of that flavoring on some of them. So they're decent. Trying to think if there's a chip that this reminds me of. It's much lighter than most chips. It's even lighter than like a potato chip, I feel. Maybe like a plain Lay's. That's about the thickness of it, but this is more like split, you know, where you get the bubbles that form and you get like an outer shell and an inner chip area. So it is very light. It's got a crunch somewhat like a popcorn. Not quite, but I would get those again. Maybe not at that price. Not very often at that price. But I mean, there's an option for you if there are a couple options if you really want something crunchy. I really shouldn't talk with my mouth full. But like I was saying, if you're looking for something crunchy, sometimes you just need a little crunch. And I speak from experience on that. I spent 8 years eating nothing but boiled peas, carrots, and chicken. I didn't have a crunchy thing for 8 years. Boy, I'll tell you, when you get the chance to eat something crunchy after 8 years without anything crunchy, it's really nice. But I do have to backtrack a little bit onto that discussion we had last night where you shouldn't substitute for things that you're trying to get away from. You should find ways to be happy with what you got. But there are some times, and honestly, a small snack-sized bag of Doritos isn't going to kill me. So I don't feel the need to necessarily do this all the time. But finding a way to find something crunchy within the realm of the dietary path that you're on, I think that's a better approach than to try to find ways to perpetuate your bad food choices. Now, the risk with these cheese things is these are pretty soft right now. They're still pretty flexible, which works for what I'm doing with it. But if you want them crunchier, you just toast them longer. But the real trick to that is there's a very fine threshold between not rigid enough rigid, and then burnt. So there's a very fine threshold to cross at that point, and so these can be a little tricky to get the hang of. I think that one of the first batch that I did of these. The other thing you have to watch out for when you're doing the cheese fry on the pan is there's a tendency sometimes to feel like you should be able to just flip it. It's going to stick to the spatula. No matter how greasy the pan is, no matter how greasy the spatula is, if the two come into connection to each other, the cheese is going to glom onto the spatula. You're kind of committed at that point. So you can take it out of the pan, try to let the cheese cool, and then gradually peel it off of the spatula. But if you try to move too much with it too fast, it's going to scrunch it up or tear it into pieces. And so it is a very fickle thing to try to make. But worth it. I mean, your other options when you're doing like low carb and keto like this for things to wrap stuff in, a replacement for breads, pitas, and wraps. You can make an egg base one. There are a couple recipes out there where you can do like egg and almond flour. You can do a romaine leaf, or do something like this. And that works all right for like a tuna or a ham salad, maybe even like a chicken salad. It's not the right choice for like a peanut butter. At least not for me. If you like peanut butter and cheese together on a sandwich, you go for it. That does not sound like a good choice to me. But the Quest chips, they had nacho, they had barbecue. I hear they also have a ranch. Overall, I feel like, it's one bag. The portion size is not huge, but that's 5 grams of carbs, one of which is dietary fiber. So 4 net carbs per package. But it's 18 grams of protein. And I know on a keto diet, you're not really going for more protein, but you do get a certain amount of protein in your diet anyway during the day. If I remember correctly, my calculations were that I was supposed to get 75% fat, 25% protein, 5% or less of carbohydrate. Or 20% protein seems to make more sense with that calculation. But regardless of that, this bag is not going to throw me over on the grams of protein that I can get in a day. So it sort of suggests that if you're going low carb or keto, you don't have to just use keto foods. You can look for low carb foods, and you can look for protein foods, because they'll be replacing some of the carbohydrate, some or even all the carbohydrates oftentimes with a protein. Now, is there a way to do something like this at home? I would say probably. Most of the seasonings could easily be added to lots of things. Could you do like a kale chip? Probably. I think that would probably be the easiest way to do a crunchy keto chip, is get like kale or even spinach or something like that in a dryer and dry them out, bake them a little bit with some oil, and then season them with some nacho cheese, and they'll be pretty tasty. This might be a good way to add an equivalent of croutons to a salad as well. So overall, not bad. But honestly, the amount I get in a bag, like a family-sized bag of pork rinds, is substantially more than what I get out of this. The only issue I have with like pork rinds is there's just sometimes that flavor is not appreciated. I'm not a huge pork rind fan. Pork rind, pork skin, whatever you want to call them, crackling. Some of them are hard. Some of them are decent texture-wise, but they still sit heavy and they have that like grease aftertaste. But they're not greasy in texture. I'll cover some of the pork rind stuff tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to do another homemade keto food choice with, I think, probably just a bag of pork rinds that I got for the same price, less than this bag, and I'll compare the size of the bag and the weight on the front so you can see the difference you get in the price. But if you're a texture, like I can oftentimes be, being able to get some texture on your food, or a chewiness, like on some of these bars that I had, like having that chewy caramel was really, really nice. Because it's something that you get predominantly from a carbohydrate. And so having something that can give you that texture appeal, that's nice. Because I can tell you, after 8 years of doing nothing but steamed vegetables and boiled vegetables and boiled protein, that it's rather exhausting to hit a point where you haven't had anything crunchy, anything like a bread or a pasta with a little bounce in its bite. I mean, you miss it. You miss a bit of that variety in the texture of your food. Not everything can be either fresh vegetable, soggy vegetable, or cooked protein. You need something else. So being able to do like a kale chip, or like in this case, which is a protein chip, or a pork rind, gives you at least some of that crunchy texture. And some of these bars have some of that chewiness. Now, are there other ways I could use a texture like this? Maybe. This goes easier with like if you can find the right, I don't know that nacho's the right thing for everything. It works all right with like a tuna melt. But by the same token, I don't know that using a ranch would be, like a ranch chip would be the right choice for tuna. Maybe not bad. I mean, ranch is just dill and onion and garlic with mayonnaise and buttermilk, and that would get you most of the way to a ranch. Whereas nacho cheese is very particular. I think you could probably get away with like a ham. Maybe like a ground beef. So this goes further, I think. You could probably do chicken sometimes, ham, tuna, beef. So you can make like a taco salad where you do a shredded lettuce, some vegetables, ground beef. Gotta figure out what you would use instead of refried beans. But you'd mix in some cheese and a family had a recipe of that where you'd mix in the shredded lettuce and then you'd crush up a bag of Doritos and sprinkle that on top for some of the crunch. And that's pretty good. And this would be something you could do that with. And it's only like $2 to $3 for one of these. What is it? What's the size of the bag here? Well, 1.1 ounce bag. So it's about, I'm trying to think, around here right now, a 1 ounce bag of Doritos would probably be about $1.25. So it's not too bad a price. It's close to double the price. Again, it's something I recommend people do all the time anyway. So using it as a treat once or twice a month, yeah, go for it. It's not a huge deal. Now I'd wager, because of the delicate nature of these, they would not be a good choice on top of like a soup. I feel like they would disintegrate into a flour real quick. Like if you've ever put like crackers or oyster crackers or chips onto a stew or soup, they have some integrity to them. They stick there. They get a little soggy, yeah, and they thicken some of the broth. But I don't think this would do that. These would turn into glue inside of whatever liquid. It would thicken it, but you won't have any crunch left. You don't have any substance left to them, I don't think. They're very soft. They're light, delicate. They almost remind me of like the dried seaweed that you can sometimes get. Alrighty, so that was kind of nice to try that. I wonder if I got a different type of cheese than the aged cheddar like that. I wonder if I could get it to cook up into flat enough, even enough. I bet you I could. I could probably make a crunchy tortilla chip style. Because I'm thinking of like a couple days ago I made some eggs, put some cheese on top of them, and I must have dropped one shred of cheese on the counter when I put the cheese on there, because picking up the cutting board to do that today, there was a piece of cheese there. I picked it up and it had a stiffness almost like a slivered almond, so it has a crunchiness to it now. And that's just leaving it out to dry. So I imagine if I took like I'll see if I can play with that tomorrow before I come on here. If I took some of the shredded cheddar, melted it into a solid disc. Oh, I might try to do that tonight, see if I can leave it out and let it, see if it crusts up overnight. So if I make a thin disc of cheddar cheese that's been melted into a sheet, and then just leave it out to see if I can get it to dry out. I could probably put it in the fridge too. The refrigerator tends to have an aspect of its pump that pulls moisture out of the air. So I bet you it would probably dehydrate that a little bit. I don't have a dehydrator right now to play with, but I would bet we could get a crunchy disc of cheese, like a cracker, or if it's too thick, it will be really hard. It'll be like a pretzel rod in hardness. But if you started with that as a base, and I'd wager probably you're going to have a little bit of the greasiness left over. If you don't, you can keep it in a separate dish and rub a little bit of it on the surface again before you put on some seasoning to get the flavor to stick to it. You could probably make some decent crackers or chips that way. And it would be decent enough that you could use it for like a salsa or a taco, like nachos. Use it for eating tuna salad or a ham salad or chicken salad, or I don't know that there's beef salad. I don't know that anybody's mixing ground beef with mayonnaise. If you are, shame on you. Although, honestly, one of the things I have found thus far into this eating this way is it's really easy to get the protein. It's deceptively simple to risk getting too high in carbs if you're not careful. I don't eat enough carby stuff to spend any time worrying about it. I can get 30 grams in a day before I have to worry about exceeding what my body should have for keto. And I haven't yet exceeded 12 grams, so I'm pretty good on that score. Protein is the one that's easier to get higher than what you should get. And fat is really hard to get from foods that don't also give you more protein. That's my biggest struggle. And the solution to that, I think, is I got myself some butter. And I'm going to make some garlic butter to season my vegetables with. And I'm going to make a olive oil and a little bit of vinegar and some seasonings to make a dressing for salad. And I've been debating because I can do like 2 tablespoons of soy sauce with sesame oil, and you kind of want an artificial sweetener in there, so you're not like, usually I would use like a maple syrup or a honey to sweeten it, but you could get like a artificial syrup or a stevia just to add a little sweet tone to it. And then a little bit of vinegar, a touch of a few other ingredients, and you can make a sesame ginger dressing, and that's pretty tasty. You can also use that on meat and stir fry, which it goes a long way. That recipe makes a lot, and I may actually make a lot of it, because using just a little bit here and there, you can easily go through a bottle of that in a day or two. It's only like I think you're only putting in like 1 or 2. I think it's about 2 tablespoons of honey when you make it non-keto. So if you did the equivalent of stevia for flavoring, you're probably good for most of it. If you wanted to add a little bit of the artificial maple syrup, sugar-free maple syrup, give it a little extra flavor profile, but you just have to watch out those artificial sweeteners, that you don't get a lot of them. And part of that is you don't want, some of them still have some carbohydrate impact on the body, but also because I have been rather gassy lately after all these sugar-free bars. Now, I've not gained any weight, but I've not really lost any either, and that's fine. I'm not looking to lose weight. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm not looking to gain muscle. I probably am gaining some muscle from the workout load that I put my body through, but So theoretically, if I weren't working out as much as I am, I wonder if I would have lost the weight, or if I'm just replacing, like, the calories I take in, I'm burning, but I'm replacing them with muscle gain rather than fat gain. So I wonder how that would pan out. I think it gets a little cloudy on the issue if I'm working out and trying a different diet. I can't decide which one's affecting what thing, what way. But like I said, I wasn't doing this to lose weight, and I wasn't doing it to gain weight either. So I'll be interested to see other effects this eating habit has on my body, especially when I get away from the commercially prepared foods like the chips and the bars, and just eat meats and cheeses and eggs and vegetables, and just see what that does for my body. Because I think that's going to make a difference, so that I'm not as digestively volatile. I'm not having any huge issues right now other than being gassy. And I'm hoping that settles out, because I got a long drive tomorrow. I don't need suddenly not to feel well while I'm traveling. All right. 36 minutes in, that's probably a good place to call it for tonight. I will be back tomorrow night. I might be a little late coming in. I don't know how long this is going to run tomorrow, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to get back here and set up some of the things I need to do to do the video tomorrow. But we're pretty much last day on the list of the taste tests I'm doing for this. I'll do more coverage of the keto diet at the end of the month, when I start the first week of the new exercise routine. So thanks for joining me. I will see you tomorrow. Take care and have a good night. Did it work? There we go. Yep. Good night. Do, 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 do.